Welcome to another mini demo by Jitterbit. Appreciate you taking the time and joining us today. My name is Sean Fatuhi, and our session today is going to be create, secure, and manage your APIs with no coding required. I'm also joined by Matthew Lonergan, our Senior Integration Solution Consultant. We appreciate you taking your time away from your busy schedule to join us today. So our intention is to make these, as I've been mentioning over the last few sessions, make it worthwhile. And with that said, let's go ahead and get started. Since this session is part of a series of interconnected demos of Jitterbit Harmony, I'll give you a very quick intro for these sessions so that you can see what these webinars entail. We will spend majority of our time in the product with the help of Matthew. After Matthew is done, I'll provide you more information about our upcoming event. So if you're interested, you can register for them and join us. Finally, we'll spend the last 5 minutes or so answering questions you have on the Q&A functionality within Zoom. So please leverage the Q&A session button to ask your question, and we'll try to get to as many questions as possible as we go through our demo. Just before passing it to Matthew for his demo, I wanted to make sure that I cover these, and hopefully as you attend more of these sessions, I'll start not covering what these webinars are and what they are not, because you've seen enough of them. But for those who haven't been to our previous sessions, I just want to make sure that you understand what we're trying to accomplish with these webinars. It's really meant to be really focused on the product without the need of marketing and sales content. It's really, these sessions are meant to be very educational in a very casual setting, so you can feel free, no pressure with salespeople or marketing, and everything that we do is live. One of the objective is to make sure there is no smoke and mirror. Everything you see is live within our platform. And the mission is to be very concise and to the point, because we know you have plenty of other things that you need to do, accomplish throughout your day. So with that said, what we're gonna do a very, very quick overview of what we did last week. We are going to create an API from scratch, so you see the experience. We also will work with existing APIs. We will go through the process of securing an API, and then we'll do testing of the API. And hopefully this gives you a good overview of our platform. Obviously within 30 minutes, there is so much that we can cover, but we'll do our best to cover the highlights. With that said, Matthew, I would like to pass it to you.
Terrific. Thanks, Sean. All right. So from a demo perspective, what I first want to do is talk about what I mean by an API in the context of today's demonstration. Then I'd like to review last week's operation that Brad created live for you. And what I'd like to do is kind of riff off of that operation, and instead of that being triggered by something like a schedule or a manual process, let's do that in real time. So traditionally, an API means, or at least the way I use it most often, is you have an application like Salesforce or HubSpot or Workday, etc., and it has a wrapper that they provide for you to give prescriptive access to the data that underlies that application. Almost every application I know of supports some level of a REST or SOAP interface for that purpose. Today, let's stretch that a little bit. So what I'm going to be talking about is a RESTful wrapper, but it's not wrapping a single application. Instead, it's wrapping a workflow, a complete process. And this kind of API hosting capability is the backbone of a lot of the processes that companies and other organizations are trying to automate. And I'll give you just a quick API 360 example. Let's say you have an employee lifecycle situation where you'd want to automate that process. Well, the HR manager lives in Workday. So what if you had a process where you could have that HR professional in the interface? They go ahead and create that record for a new employee. This is an onboarding process. So they fill out the record as they need to, and they hit the save button. That record becomes a payload sent to a Jitterbit API. From that point, it's a workflow at the integration layer, and we can have quite sophisticated flows that do a series of things. One of those things would be, let's create an AD account. Let's provision a laptop in LANDesk, or some other application that supports APIs. Let's go ahead and make sure a security badge is waiting for that employee. In other words, let's do everything that's necessary for an employee to be valuable on day one. When they sit down, everything just works. And in an API-powered world, what you have is the HR professional just hitting that button and being done. Everything happens in the background. They don't have to participate, and it all happens in real time. So let's go ahead and get out of the theoretical and into the real. So let's take a tour of last week's session. This is the operation chain that Brad authored for you, and what it did in this first operation is we synced the Salesforce account object records with a database inside Postgres. And so that customer demo table would get populated in that first operation. I'll go ahead and kick this off so we get some records in that Postgres. The second operation took any records in Postgres that did not have a Salesforce ID representing net new records to Salesforce, sent them to Salesforce. Salesforce accepted them, created a new account, which created obviously a Salesforce ID, and then it returned that ID so that we could upsert that or update that record in Postgres. So he ran it just like I did. I just hit these buttons and said run. But let's take another, let's take a riff on that, and let's use a real-time API to do what we accomplish here with manual kickoffs. So the first part of that is we have an operation that's designed to accept an API payload. That's here. Then we transform, in this case, JSON, and then we insert that record into Postgres. And in order to emulate an application, I'm going to use Postman's kind of the Swiss Army knife for integration professionals, and it gives you the ability to send payloads and see exactly what's coming and going. But you could pretend this is any application that has that webhook capability. You could pretend it was a web application of some sort, etc. So we have a JSON payload. Let me change the car maker so we have a net new record. And let's go with Frisker. Right. And this send button is going to send this payload to an API I've already created. I'm going to create one from scratch in a minute, but we've got this one ready to go. We'll hit send, and then this is actually the data that gets sent up. So based on that, we should have a new record. I'll refresh this with the Frisker at the bottom. There we go. And you'll notice what it's missing. It's missing this Salesforce ID. And since that's the key that both applications are using to keep track of data, then that's not a good thing. So that means Salesforce is not yet aware that there's a new account to be loaded. So what we're going to do for that second part is we're going to point a triggering API at this existing operation. Just go ahead and make that run, and that should take that record from Postgres, add the Salesforce ID because it's going to be a new record in Salesforce, and then return that and update the record with that ID. So in order to do that, I'm going to move over to the API manager. I have it in a separate tab, but it's a member of the client team, if you will, that you can access from a single browser window if you wish for the creation of the operations straight up through the creation of the APIs. I'll go ahead and filter down all of these APIs I have access to the webinar section. And let's go ahead and create a new API. Now, next to the new API button, you see the new proxy button. So we're creating an API to be consumed by Jitterbit, but what if you have created APIs in your shop that are front-ending other applications, etc.? Because this is an API manager and not just an API creation tool, you can manage all of those APIs straight through through this interface. So let's create the new API. Let's call this get SFDC SFID. And we'll select the environment that it's going to run in. I can edit this if I wish to be more specific in the URL. You're not locked down to here, so we could call this SFID by itself. That ought to do. It's versioned, and you can roll back and roll forward much in the way you can with Jitterbit projects in Cloud Studio. That's doubly important here because this is an internet-facing RESTful interface. So you need to be able to roll back, roll forward really quickly with a couple, or take it out completely with a couple button clicks. I could enable verbose logging, and I can have a debug function here, and the default is for 1 hour. This way I can test my APIs in a real world scenario and go ahead and see those logs. Let's go ahead and identify the project that we are working with, then the operation that we want to kick off, and that's that WebDB to SFDC. The method counts, the verbs count. In this case, we're going to use a get. You can use any of the standard ones, or if you have a custom one, we support that as well, but get works for this purpose. Response type, I'm going to kick this off via a browser. I want you to see the security interaction, and I want you to see the payload as it comes back from that integration layer. I could instead simply populate a system variable. If I do that, I can use that payload for other purposes, or that response for other purposes in another operation. No response is just do it. Trigger it, don't need to know about it, log it if I need to find out information. In this case, final target. Great. So next, we need to assign a security profile. I'm going to go into this in more detail in a minute, but I'm going to choose the Okta security profile, an OAuth mechanism, OAuth 2, and move on to the next step. This is a definition of the API I'm about to publish. Hit the button. I'm going to copy this URL. That's what I'm going to use to access the API. But in the meantime, I want to show you a couple things. One is that the API manager has this ability to generate, edit, and regenerate Swagger docs. That's great for the documentation end of things, but also it allows you to war game against any one of the verbs and any one of the APIs. In other words, try it out, see how your API performs, etc. In addition, we have the logs. Remember, I turned on that verbose reading, so I have some information about the last time I ran an API and what happened. On the analytics front, we have a series of indices, top 10 IPs, the top 10 apps and consumers of the APIs, and then finally, what's your most popular APIs, along with some graphical information about the performance of your APIs and basically the load you're putting on the system. And as promised, let's talk about security for a minute. Because this is internet facing, we want to be as secure as we can while allowing flexibility in the operation of those APIs. So it's, again, a form you fill out, but very kind of simply done. And we support anonymous, basic auth, which is username, password, OAuth 2, or API key. In this case, we're going to pick OAuth 2. We support a series of providers. These providers tend to be the majority that we run into. We're authoring new ones as we go for some of the more for some of the edge cases. In this case, I would have chosen Okta, and it's conditional. The form is conditional based on what you choose. Then you fill in the information to have that OAuth dance go through, and you're done. The reason you want to create a profile rather than just editing the security on the API is for standardization. So somebody who creates an API, if they use an approved security profile, they're not going to miss anything, and you really achieve some security against that API. All right, so now let's actually kick this thing off. I'm going to use an incognito window because I practice on this, and it would remember my Okta information. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. Brief tour of the URL this is the listener in Jitterbit Harmony. This is the environment it's going to run in. This is the version, and this is the API I want to invoke. So let's go ahead and hit that button. You see OAuth here. Let's go ahead and fill that information out and sign in. And then once I do that, we get the response back from the integration that has this Salesforce ID in it. I know it's a little ugly. I just wanted you to see what actually gets sent back. So based on that, I should be able to refresh this and see that, there you go, that SFID. That means to me that the Salesforce record has been created and we have an ID to put against the Postgres database. So let's just take a quick tour back to what I wanted to get across today. Basically, I wanted to show you an option for kicking off integrations by using real-time means, an API management tool that gives you that general capability of creating APIs or proxying APIs that you already manage. And so what we did was we kicked that off via Postman to provide a record for Postgres, and then I created an API so that you could actually see it operate and actually return that information back to Salesforce and create that SFID. The other thing I would mention is that you've seen a series of connectors here that we used for the creation of these operations, and they're pre-built by Jitterbit, and we got a lot of them. Although the fact is that there are literally hundreds of thousands of APIs out there, and so just plugging a future one of these series, we have a connector builder, a form-based connector builder for creating RESTful connections, that's great. If you want to get serious about it, we also have a connector SDK. So when I was talking about the API 360, the life cycle, and I used the onboarding process, maybe one of those steps in that process is there isn't a connector for it. That's why we provide that service. So I think that would be an important one of these series to be a part of. So at this point, I think I've accomplished what I was supposed to today. I'll hand it back to Sean.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Matthew, for a great demo. Let me go ahead and share my screen. As Matthew mentioned, just to give you a little bit of a heads up, we were practicing this session, and we were thinking about 30 minutes, and every time we tried it, it ended up being a little bit shorter than 30 minutes. So hopefully that's okay with you guys. Maybe we can get to some more questions at the end. But I do want to tell you a little bit about what you're going to get an email from us, obviously thanking you for joining the session, give you a link to the recording just in case you want to review some of the content. We also will send you a link to a survey. It would take about 1 to 2 minutes to fill out, and that will drive some of the topics that you're interested in. We've gotten a couple of ideas already based on the feedback we got, so we will announce some of that in the coming sessions. As far as the connector builder that Matthew mentioned, we will be doing that next week, same time. If you go to our website and you can register for those, and we'll send you a link as well as a follow-up. After our connector builder, we're going to be talking about process templates. Again, Matthew mentioned the onboarding piece. We have process templates that we have developed that allows you to get 50 to 80% of the way from an implementation, time and cost is concerned. So if you're interested in some of those, please join us August 12th. And as of right now, we have a temporary placeholder for EDI. We saw some interest about EDI. So we're working on that, and as of right now, it's tentative for August 19th, and that may not be updated on our website, but it will soon, so you can register for it.
And Sean, if I can interject just real quick. So I do have an excuse for being quick. I won a demo jam at Dreamforce, and the demo jam gives you 3 minutes, and the creation of an API is one of the things that I did for that demo jam. So maybe my pacing is a little quicker. So if I missed anything, please go ahead and hit that QA button, and we'll answer it live.
Sounds good. Appreciate it. All right, so with that said, let's go to the QA session. There are some questions that have come up, some of which Matthew might have addressed already, but we'll review them. As always, we do have tech webinars at jitterbit.com. This is an email that goes to some of our technical team members at Jitterbit. So it's not going to be, you're not going to be connected with salespeople or marketing people. So leverage that email as much as you want. You won't be bothered with salespeople. So with that said, let me go through some of the questions here. The first one is, can you use Okta for other parts of the platform? Great question, and that's actually one of the proof of concepts I was involved with recently, where they wanted to make sure, our prospect, now our customer, wanted to secure Cloud Studio with Okta, so that way the user management is in one place. In their case, it was Okta. We could absolutely do that. So you could not only secure APIs, but you can also secure the platform itself with managing your users in Okta. And that was from KC, the middle initial, or the initials of the user who asked it. PA is asking, can you create an API with parameters? I'm assuming you're talking about being able to do like hitting an API with, you want to set it some value dynamically and be able to get the results back, or send a payload via parameters. We could absolutely do that. I don't think, Matthew, you cover that, but that is definitely part of the platform, and you could certainly do that.
Oh, yeah.
All right, next question coming from AT. Does your API offering replace Apogee? There are some overlaps. I'll take a stab at that, Matthew. There are some overlaps, but we also have customers that use Apogee with Jitterbit. So there are cases where the feature functionalities may be the same. Maybe Apogee does certain things better than what we do, and vice versa. But Apogee is really not into the integration piece. There's certainly a leader on the API side. So that's where we see some of our customers leverage both technology to work hand in hand. So hopefully that answered that question. A question coming from MC. Let's see, can we create an API that can be used by our partners? We've seen many situations where enterprises wanted to expose some of their data, like product information, inventory information, to their partners. You could absolutely do that. So you could be building integrations that exposes some of that API in your back office applications such as SAP or any other ERP, and to build an API, give that API, secure it with whatever mechanism that works for you, and be able to share that with your partner or anybody outside of the company. So hopefully that answers that question. I don't know if Matthew, if you have anything else to add.
I'll say this, that we drink our own champagne in the sense that we have APIs that we use with some of our partners for that kind of very purpose, for access to information that we wanted, just certain people to have, and they can hit that API they can hit that API to get that kind of data.
Got it. Okay. Can the payload be XML instead of JSON? That was from PK. Absolutely. You can design your integration to accept XML, JSON, or actually any type of payload that you want. Obviously, I believe when you created, Matthew, when you created the part where you inserted data, you had JSON from what I remember. So
I've used JSON because it was convenient. Often the payload's coming out of Salesforce. If you use an outbound message there, it's going to be an XML. Yeah, the listener's agnostic. It's just waiting for a payload. The Jitterbit integration layer will help you parse those out.
Got it. Okay. I have a question from JT. Do you have an API portal that allows developers to discover the APIs that are created, how they are to be used, etc.? Yeah, and I don't know if, Matthew, you covered that piece. As part of that drop-down menu, as you navigate to different parts of our API manager, one piece was the developer portal. So that way you could expose those APIs to other people, whether they're internal or external. So that way they don't mess around with that Swagger documentation. They could just go to a URL where they can see all the APIs that are available. So hopefully that answered that question.
I'll tell you this, I wish more of the endpoints, and obviously in my business, I'm doing this all day, every day. I wish that there were more users, that more applications that use that model instead of something you can interact with. It's a big plus when you're working with APIs.
Got it. And we have a couple more, and I know we're kind of running at the bottom of the hour, but this is a good one. How does your API platform play with Salesforce? We were actually thinking about, and we got some feedback from some of you about doing a session specifically around Salesforce, so we have it on our items to do for these sessions. And but to let you know, if you create an API in Jitterbit, you could expose that, get that URL and put it in an outbound message. So when events get triggered in Salesforce, whether it's creating an account or an opportunity or status changes, that API could be called to do what it needs to do. We will do some sessions around that probably in the coming weeks. And I will do one more question because I think that's important. Question was asked, can you show us how you can work with Azure Active Directory? I would say probably we could either have that sent to our survey, so that way maybe we can talk about a specific session on that if there is enough interest. Another way is to, again, email us at techwebinars@jitterbit.com, and maybe we could do a one-on-one session with no salespeople. We promise we will not get salespeople engaged unless you want them to get engaged. So that was answered by I can't see it. I think it's WD or WO, I can't remember. So if you want a private session with our technical team, just shoot us an email to techwebinars@jitterbit.com or place it with, just put it on your survey so we can get back to you. I think that's at the bottom of the hour. We went over by 2 minutes, and Matthew, you were short, but the questions were great. I wanted to make sure we answer as many of them as possible. Thank you very much for spending your early morning or mid-afternoon with us, and we'll send you the link for our upcoming events. You can register and join us next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.